Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Yonit Arthur. I'm an audiologist and coach. You're on the Steady Coach. Today, I'm going to be answering the question of whether you need therapy in order to recover from medically unexplained chronic dizziness or other symptoms. Neural circuit dizziness, or PPPD, MdDS, vestibular migraine. That's the focus of my channel, but this video applies to anyone out there with neural circuit symptoms, medically unexplained chronic symptoms, including tinnitus, hyperacusis, misophonia, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, and many more. Now, this video is specifically about psychotherapy or counseling, not vestibular therapy, but I actually have answered whether you should do vestibular therapy in different videos. So if you want to see the entire Ask Dr. Yo series of videos, there is a giant playlist that is linked in the video description below or in the podcast description if you're listening to this as a podcast. So if you have questions, you should definitely check out that playlist. Okay. Do you need therapy to recover from neural circuit symptoms? The answer is absolutely not. However, this question comes up a lot on my channel. And the reason this question comes up a lot on my channel is because many of you have probably heard me say this already, but I am very clear on this, that for many people, there is more to recovery than just not fearing your symptoms anymore and knowing that your brain is just producing an error. Now, we're going to talk about a lot of things in this video. We're going to talk about why I have that particular perspective and what I specifically mean by other things that you need to do to get better. I'm going to talk about the types of therapy and counseling that are actually useful and what your actual goal is if you are to do therapy or counseling or coaching. And I think this will also help you if you are not planning to do therapy, coaching, or counseling, or what have you, because it's going to give you the kind of idea of what you might need to work on in order to recover, whether you're, again, doing that with someone else or not. So, okay, let's start off with my rationale. You're going to hear some controversy about this. So, in the mind-body world, the neuroplastic or neural circuit symptom recovery world, there are some very prominent voices that say things like, you don't need to dig into your past. There's no point in ruminating. There's no point in releasing emotions. Just focus on responding differently to your symptoms right now and knowing that they're just a nervous system error. And there's a lot of truth in that because that perspective really covers the core of what needs to be done for recovery. You cannot recover from neural circuit symptoms until you are less afraid of your symptoms and until you understand that your nervous system is just creating an error. That's true for everyone. But that is not adequate for everyone. That does not get everyone to what I think of as lasting recovery. And I define lasting recovery in terms of not just what happens to your symptoms, but in terms of how your nervous system responds to future blips, future sources of stress, future weird sensations that might show up spontaneously because we have weird, noisy bodies and that kind of stuff just happens sometimes. So lasting recovery means your nervous system permanently does not over-respond to those things and create issues for you anymore that are chronic, okay? So there's a difference to me between symptom recovery, just plain old symptom recovery, and lasting recovery. And to me, lasting recovery involves really looking at the whole picture of your nervous system, not just how it's responding to symptoms. So when you are dealing with a neural circuit symptom of whatever kind, dizziness or different symptom, what you're essentially dealing with is your nervous system being just overly sensitive to particular triggers. And when we think of triggers, we often think of the symptoms themselves and things that make the symptoms worse. So things like bending over or going to a grocery store or getting really stressed out about something that happened that day. Those are the kinds of triggers we tend to think about. So if we're working just on our reactions to symptoms and just on our fears and anxiety related to symptoms, Once we've dealt with those things and we understand that those triggers are actually false alarms and the brain's just overreacting to them, it's much easier to recover. Obviously, your brain just stops overreacting to symptoms and triggers as much. Again, big part of recovery. The thing is that those aren't the only things that contribute to your nervous system being sensitive to danger. So, again, with neural circuit symptoms, your system is being overly sensitive to danger in general, not just to symptoms specifically, but danger in general. And the symptoms are the thing it thinks maybe is the most dangerous currently, but its sensitivity dial is affected by more than just symptoms. So, for example, if you are a huge perfectionist and your life is in disarray because you're dealing with symptoms, that's going to turn the sensitivity dial up. And we're going to talk about this example more in just a couple minutes. If you are having trouble in relationships, that makes your nervous system a little more sensitive to danger. So those things also are influencing how your nervous system reacts to those symptom-related triggers. And I generally define this as your nervous system being more sensitive to inner and outer triggers. So it may be more sensitive to normal daily activities and think those are dangerous for whatever reason. Maybe it just has some associations there with danger, but inner triggers also. So your own thoughts and feelings can make your nervous system think that you're in danger. And therein lies why I say that there's a little bit more to recovery than just changing your response to symptoms. Because if you're just changing your response to symptoms and your thoughts around symptoms, that's great. You're doing a great job. And if you've come so far in your recovery and you're doing that, that's amazing. So congratulations. But you are not necessarily addressing your nervous system's overall sensitivity dial to stress and threat, and you're going to need to do that for lasting recovery. I often talk about this in the metaphor of the stress bucket. There are things that affect your stress bucket that are not symptom related, and that's why we need to work on those things. And because the stress bucket being full means your nervous system will over respond to symptoms, even if the symptoms aren't actually an issue or the triggers aren't scary anymore. Here's the thing about the past, okay? So our brains are prediction machines. We talk about that a lot on my channel. Prediction machine means that our past experiences inform how our nervous system understands current experiences. So we can't really separate how we are responding in the present from the learnings our brain is using to make predictions about the present. In other words, what's happened to you previously sets the stage for how your nervous system is going to respond now. And that is why, for some of you, the process of addressing this nervous system sensitivity dial that I keep talking about, or the stress bucket, which I've talked about previously, involves looking at your past, because your past is the source. It's the source of a lot of the material your brain is using to make predictions about now. And here's the thing. A lot of those past assumptions, those what we think of as presuppositions about the world, the basic assumptions about the world that you have that determine how stressful your life is now, are things that are not in your conscious awareness. They're just such basic assumptions of truth about the world that you operate as though they're true without even knowing you're making these assumptions. I'm going to give you a couple of examples now because I know this can be a little bit of a tricky concept to understand. So let's just say you grew up in a home where you were really praised for being successful. And let's just say you weren't even punished for not being successful, but you only got really good attention when you were being very successful. You could implicitly learn through that, even though no one ever said this to you directly. You could learn my value as a person is related to my productivity and my success. Therefore, if I'm not successful, then I am not a worthy person. And then because you have that kind of baseline assumption about how the world works, you develop strategies to make yourself successful. Okay, so because that's true, because I am not worthy if I'm not successful, I'm going to become a gigantic perfectionist and kind of a workaholic. So now we're dealing with a situation that because of this baseline belief that you have, you're putting a ton of extra stress on yourself. When something outside happens, when an outside trigger happens, symptoms or no symptoms, you are going to add 1,000 times more pressure on to yourself because you have this strategy of needing to succeed at all costs and being a perfectionist. Then you get neural circuit dizziness or other symptoms. Now what happens? Often this means you can't be productive because you have symptoms. And suddenly that strategy is taken away. And you are left not only with the stress of and the pain, and honestly, probably lack of strategies to deal with this sense of unworthiness that's coming up. Now that's stressful. But you're also constantly trying to spin your wheels to be successful again, because these are the strategies that have worked. So that adds a bunch of stress. You don't need extra stress on top of the symptoms. So the symptoms themselves can be a source of stress, and maybe you've done a great job of addressing your fears of symptoms and your anxiety. Fantastic. But if you still have that stress from this kind of, that's all based on this unconscious belief you don't even know that you have, then you're still driving a ton of danger into your system. Your nervous system is still going to be very sensitive when symptoms start, because even if you're not afraid of them anymore, it's going to bring up this whole unworthiness feeling because you can't be as productive as you'd like. That's one example. Another quick example. Let's say that you had a relationship at some point in your life where it wasn't safe to express anger. And in fact, the other person would get really cold and just kind of be kind of a jerk to you when you were angry. So maybe, again, not necessarily even abuse or trauma, but you learned, hey, if I want to be intimate and close and connected to other people, I'd better not express my anger. Okay, so now we're in a situation where you don't have access to anger. And anger is a very useful emotion because it tells you when your needs are not being met or when a boundary is being crossed. And so you can become a giant people pleaser, never realizing that you're completely ignoring your own needs and completely ignoring your own boundaries, which is stressful in and of itself because your needs aren't being met. But you also build up resentment. You build up resentment because you don't even realize that you're the one overriding your own needs to try to protect yourself from abandonment or being disconnected from people. And then other people aren't doing what you actually need them to do. So you build up resentment toward them. That's stressful. And then you develop chronic dizziness or other medically unexplained chronic symptoms. And now what you're dealing with is a situation where you do need help. You need more help than you did before. You still don't know how to ask for it. And people aren't helping you. And you are up to here with both not getting your needs met, not getting the things that you need from other people, but also the fact that you might feel even more resentful toward them for not meeting your needs, especially at this time of crisis for you. That's incredibly stressful. So then anytime a symptom shows up, what happens? All of that comes to the surface too. And you might not, again, all of this is based on this belief, this bottom line belief. I'm not allowed to feel my needs. I'm not allowed to stand up for my needs at all. The sky is blue and I can't stand up for my needs. Or like in the previous example, the grass is green and I'm unworthy if I don't succeed. So again, both situations that I just described, you have a baseline unconscious belief about the world that you're assuming is truth. So you're not even aware this is happening. And that is causing so much more stress for you than the symptoms themselves or the fear of symptoms themselves. In fact, for some people, this is the primary driver. They're like, Yonit, I don't get it. The symptoms suck. I don't like them. I'm scared in the moment, but it quickly goes away. I know this is a brain error. Why do I still have symptoms? It's this other stuff. It's because every time a symptom happens, it's triggering this unbelievable avalanche of stress that has nothing to do directly with the symptoms. And this is why I said at the beginning, many of you are going to benefit from having therapy, counseling, coaching, because these truth type of beliefs are so buried, we have total blind spots about them. You can have total blind spots about what your basic assumptions about the world are. Okay. Now, why do we even need to know about these baseline assumptions? I know I just basically explained the problem to you, but what's the solution for it? What do you do when you uncover one of these baseline assumptions that you have? Well, the answer is once something is conscious, you can change it. If you're just making an assumption that something's true, then you're not going to be able to change it. Once you can actually bring it up to the surface and look at it, then you have the option to say, hang on a second, actually, this is not consistent with my current experiences at all. I can't believe that. It's almost silly now that I bring it up to the surface. It's almost silly that I was using this assumption to drive my life because it doesn't line up with my adult experiences or my current experiences at all. So I actually think for many of the people you see recover without doing any quote unquote emotional work, they're actually feeling some of these inner shifts that I'm talking about. When I say inner shift, what I mean is those baseline beliefs have changed and they're not causing themselves as much stress anymore. They're actually doing that. It's just that they haven't needed to do direct work on it because just gaining power and agency from recovering from symptoms and treating themselves with a little more kindness and recognition that our bodies aren't machines that can be driven without consequences, that maybe there is some self-care in order, what have you. They've already changed kind of their baseline assumptions about the world. But for many of you, you're going to need to do explicit work on this because your internal beliefs are driving a ton of extra stress that are keeping your nervous system highly sensitive. And that's what's leading to chronic symptoms for you. So what actually happens when you meet one of these baseline beliefs? So there are lots of different approaches that can help with this, but they all essentially come back to memory reconsolidation type processes. I have an entire wonderful interview that describes memory reconsolidation in detail. So please check out the video description for the link to the interview with Tori Olds. And if you can't find the video description or podcast description, just go on YouTube and search for The Steady Coach, Tori Olds, OLDS. It is an incredible interview and it'll explain everything that I'm about to say in a lot more detail. But essentially, memory reconsolidation means you uncover those beliefs and experience the deep truth of them, and not just cognitively. Not like, oh, I have this belief that doesn't make any sense, but more like, oh, I understand why this makes sense. I understand very deeply, physically, emotionally, like where this belief came from and why I would believe it. And then at the same time, having a powerful, what memory reconsolidation calls a juxtaposition. So at the same time experiencing a completely contradictory experience. So an experience that tells your brain, wait a second, that old belief actually doesn't make sense. Like these two things can't be true at the same time. It can't both be true that I'm an unworthy human being if I'm not successful, and that I'm also worthy no matter what. Like I can't, those things don't make sense together. If you can have an experience like that, then those old beliefs get overwritten, and then up the chain, all of those strategies that you've developed to try to meet your needs, again, based on this truth that wasn't really a truth, that all changes. And suddenly you're putting yourself under so much less stress and your nervous system is so much less sensitized, and then you recover. So regardless of whether you're choosing to go to therapy or coaching or counseling, or you're going to be doing this work on your own, for all of you, the other work that needs to be done for chronic symptom recovery is the kind of work that creates an inner shift in some of those truths, those beliefs, those strategies that you're currently using. Your entire worldview needs to shift just enough that you are not putting yourself under so much stress on the inside, that you are allowing your nervous system to know that symptoms or no symptoms, you are truly safe. Until your nervous system knows that you're safe, deeply knows that you're safe, you can't fully recover. So for those of you who have more questions about this, please check out that interview. And I'm looking forward to the discussion in the comment section. I hope this video made sense and clarifies my viewpoint on this. Again, that video I mentioned as well mentions the kinds of therapy that I think are most useful for this purpose. Some of you don't need to use deep change work, transformational therapy type of stuff in order to do this, but many of you do. So please check out that video for more references on that. Comments and questions, leave them below. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. That word totally got tangled up. And I'm so glad it waited until the end of this video because I had such a hard time recording this video. For some reason, this topic was like a big tangled mess in my head. So this is like my third take, which is unusual for me. I usually just do these in first takes. Okay, so as I was saying, questions, comments, drop them below, like, share, subscribe. Please also consider following the podcast if you're listening to this as a podcast, leaving us a high star rating. These things all help me reach more people. And now I'm going to go rest my brain because apparently this video was very hard to make. All right, I will talk to you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.